are back at Biohackers World. This is the Becoming Young podcast with Josh and Janae, and we have an amazing guest again, Rachel Lambert. Now, Rachel, you are the founder of Tell Us What You Do.
Yeah, so I have a brain mapping and neurofeedback company. We specialize in those really looking to get to the root of mental health issues. So everything from anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, migraines. So we do the initial baseline brain map so we can actually understand the root cause of where these symptoms are coming from. And then neurofeedback is our treatment plan. So clients go through a series of neurofeedback therapy so that they can actually rebalance unstable brainwave activity.
Okay, so this is a lot that you just gave us, and you founded this company. Tell us a little bit about how that happened, what took you to this place.
Yes, so I struggled with my mental health growing up, deeply so, from a very, very, very young age. I had tried medication, I had tried talk therapy, and I actually came from a very supportive home, but my behavior was just completely out of control.
So you were a wild one is what you're saying.
Wild one.
I've got one or two of those.
Ooh.
I'm really interested in this conversation.
Yeah. And I was actually diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I'll talk about that on stage a little bit at 4 o'clock too, but bipolar, as you know, is typically a life sentence of medication management. Like you don't come back from that. And I'm so grateful that that was not my story because my parents ended up finding out about brain mapping and neurofeedback. At the end of it, I did a second QEEG brain map, which showed the results of all of the work that I had done. And the new pattern showed not one pattern for bipolar.
Wow.
And truly, I can tell you, like, I had never felt more grounded. It was the first time I had ever felt in control of my brain. I was happier. And it's just really what inspired me to get into this field and help other people truly get in control of their brain health.
Wow. So I imagine that a lot of people think that this is sort of maybe something out of science fiction. So can you talk to us a little bit about the science behind this and what this really means for each individual brain?
Yes. Honestly, I can't tell you how many people are like, what is that weird, like, brain zapping, woohoo, snake oil that you do? And I love it. I love a skeptic. Like, please, I want people to feel empowered when they make a decision around neurofeedback. If you actually look at the science, it's very, very fundamental from a learned behavior standpoint. So a lot more people are familiar with, say, Pavlov's dog, right? We can learn anything as human beings. You're never going to question, does a baby know how to walk? Could I learn how to ride a bike? Your brain figures it out and it learns how to do it and it commits it to neurological permanency. That is exactly what neurofeedback's doing. All we're doing is rewarding the brain with exterior forms of reward so that it can correct unstable brainwave activity. So while it might seem woohoo, it's actually one of the most objective ways that you can measure health because you're getting data. You're getting to see how the brain trends and tracks across the course of time, which really shows for clients' health proof of change.
That's really interesting. So tell me a little bit about my experience has been mainly with meditation and some microdosing of things with plasticity. How does this really relate to somebody on a daily basis, and how is the medical community really adopting this? Is this something that a lot of GPs or psychologists or those types of specialists are going to even know to recommend?
Two such good questions. So the first question, just around microdosing and ketamine and how does this relate? The way that I look at it is we are like hardware experts. I'm a big fan of all of the things that, especially going to a longevity conference, we're recommending: cold plunging, microdosing, ketamine, mindfulness. It's key to our behavior so that we can actually get in control of our brain on a day-to-day basis. But how many of us do all those things and we still can't sleep at night, or we still struggle with anxiety and we constantly feel like we're just managing it? That is where it's really a hardware issue. And sometimes you have to get to the hardware so that then doing microdosing and your meditation actually provides the results that you need. So that is the box that we live in, is really just resetting the hardware so that then the person can get the fruits from all the things that they're doing outside of it. I look at it too, like meditation will put you in a state of more calm and focus, but it can't necessarily sustain that place.
Sure.
Neurofeedback teaches the brain how to do what meditation's doing on its own, but it's rewarding it so that becomes the new default mode network of the brain. Your second question around how is it being adopted to more of the medical community, I'd honestly say, even at this biohacking conference, I was shocked at how many people don't even know what neurofeedback and brain mapping is. I love that though, because that means we get to blaze trails moving forward and what health actually looks like. The biggest disconnect that I actually see is lack of education. Still, prescribing doctors don't even know that you can train your brain. But the more people are starting to really find out about it, I've been in the field for 17 years, and honestly, probably the last 5 years more than ever, I get referrals from primary care or docs because they don't know what else to do with their patient. They've tried everything and they're like, I don't know, I heard about this neurofeedback thing, maybe try to find it. So I do think there's a slow drip of change. As you guys know too, like biohacking and longevity is starting to really take wind, and so I think that's helping the field in general from a more natural approach.
So you bring up a good point, and there's not a lot of education around this, and it's not as available. I heard about neurofeedback years ago, but I would like to try it for my children. I haven't yet because it's been hard for me to find a place where I can do it, and it's not generally covered by insurance. But just for those who are not familiar with what it is, can you just give a quick overview and educate our audience on, just a quick overview on what that is?
Yes, so like I said, we do the initial baseline EEG. It's completely non-invasive, and we utilize a cap that we have our clients place on their heads, or we do it for them if they're coming into a clinic. So we have a remote program.
And you're actually measuring the brain waves and the activity that's happening in the brain. So I just want to clarify that. Okay.
And it's also not a stress test. So I'm not sitting here trying to evoke your emotion or put you into a state of ADHD. Similar to an EKG of a heartbeat, we're just measuring the activity that's happening, right?
Yeah.
With that information, I'm going to see patterns. So I can see, do you struggle with sleep issues? Do you still have trauma that you need to work through? Do you have migraines? All of that's evident even without you telling me much. I can see it on your brain. Our brains are testimonies of what's going on with us in real life. So you do the baseline, you get then to review your results with a clinician, which is one of my favorite parts of the program, because you're actually getting to understand the root cause of where your struggles are stemming from neurologically. So not only does it validate you, but it's so hope-giving to be like, wow, that's exactly what's going on, but there's a plan and I don't have to feel stuck like this my whole life.
And I would imagine clients, when they can see that, it's like, yeah, I've been struggling with this, and then they see a paper that gives them the feedback that validates how they're feeling. And it's scientific and measurable, which is,
100%. Or maybe people have wondered, like, I think I'm ADHD, or I think I, have this issue. And we look at their brain, and I would say 6 out of 10 people that think they're ADHD, they're not. Their brain's actually significantly overactive, and it just doesn't know how to slow down. Like, why do we give somebody with true ADHD a stimulant? To speed up their brain, right? But actually, a lot of us have these symptoms of ADHD, but it's for a completely different root cause why. This is why I love actually getting the root approach, where you're getting down to the nitty-gritty of how the brain's operating for the individual.
Yeah, which is so neat when you can actually see, because the brain is so difficult to see. We can't really do like really in-depth imaging of it, that type of thing, but it's very measurable, right? Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how this applies to aging and longevity and performance. Okay, so I coach a lot of high performers, and my exposure to this type of training in the neurofeedback is with a lot of the sports, sports stars. Talks like that. But I know a lot of the quarterbacks are using this in order to improve their speed, their accuracy, their decision making, right? And it's really about taking the brain and popping it into not just better performance, but like peak performance, right? Optimal performance. So my question for you is, how does someone who maybe is not trying to diagnose something, but really wants to take things to the next level, how do you help those folks really get started in that?
Absolutely. I love when people come to us more proactively, right? Like, training your brain is not just for those that are suffering. It's for those that are looking to do 1%, 2%, 3% better. It's both sides of the coin, right? And if we can be more proactive with our mental health, it's a game changer for your future. So we work with a ton of executives, CEOs of companies, professional athletes as well, and doing exactly what you're talking about, working on peak performance. Because for them, right, it could be that 1 second of inaccuracy or a little bit of stress going into a game that changes the whole entire game. So we do the same thing. We really do neurofeedback training, but their protocols might look completely different, because every single one of our protocols for the neurofeedback is completely customized to the person, their brain map, but also what the objectives are. There's a brainwave called gamma in the brain that is still pretty under researched in my opinion, but gamma is related to a heightened level of consciousness in performance. And so what we see in the majority of people's brains is a very, very low production, meaning a really small microvoltage essentially of gamma wave activity. But what we found out is that if you can actually increase that activity, it's directly related to peak performance. So a lot of our professional athletes were trying to teach their brain how to shift into a gamma state or sustain like a level of flow a little bit longer or better.
So I need to put this cap on so that Janae can see that I am always in peak performance.
Let's see how big your gamma range is.
We can compare. It'll be a fun comparison.
Josh might be surprised at whose range is bigger.
You know what? I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt that at all. So this is awesome. We talked before we started recording, right, about maintaining instead of regaining. And so when I think about not only the biology in the rest of my body for keeping myself young, right, and keeping my biomarkers younger, the brain is something like I don't want to be a prisoner, right, in my own body when I'm 85 or 90. Yeah. So how can we use this type of technology and learning and medicine to be able to keep ourselves functioning at a peak mental performance as we age?
Absolutely. I think there's so many more techniques right now that, to your said, keep you physically fit, right? All the different longevity implementations, stem cell, peptides, cold plunge. I mean, there's so much information out there, at least in the people that are in this interest level that you have access to. But what are we doing for the neck up, if you will? A lot of cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of these unfortunate struggles that people have, what is a huge component of that is lacking novelty. So putting yourself in situations where you're gonna experience new or be challenged and be curious. And that is exactly what neurofeedback in specific does, is you have to challenge the brain in order for it to correct itself in the first place. So there's a lot of research actually on training your brain and how that's directly related to longevity and cognitive performance and memory and stuff like that. So very big believer in that, but there's also a lot of things that we should be doing in the first place that we're not doing to improve our cognitive function. Just simple things like brushing your teeth, for example, with your left hand or taking a different route home. What are you doing that is out of your traditional routine so that your brain is challenged by something that's novel that it has to figure out? And as simple as that is, it is a game changer for the way that your brain operates.
So is that sort of keeping that neuroplasticity sort of guessing and alive, right? And for anybody who doesn't know what that means, so you've got neurons, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you're the expert here, but you have neurons in your brain that are trying to connect, right? And create and do that information exchange. And then you mentioned the default mode network, which is sort of the operator in the brain. And we sort of get lazy in a lot of parts of our body as we age. And so part of that is keeping that neuroplasticity alive and well, right? Which is why some of those things like microdosing, things that helps with the neuroplasticity and creating those new connections. So the great part about it is, as you're talking, you don't need to necessarily microdose. You don't necessarily need to do some of these things. There are ways that you can get started by doing some simple things and keeping the brain active and putting some stress in it. Am I speaking correctly?
Oh,
there?
you nailed it, 100%, right? It's like how far do you want to take it into the spectrum? Most people don't even do the small things. So start there and then watch how powerful that is. And then to your point, I look at it like advanced techniques. Like there's a lot of other things that you can be doing to really move yourself forward to making sure that you're staying really cognitively fit as you age.
So what are those? What are those advanced techniques?
I mean, you named it. I think I've never done microdosing. I've heard a lot of my clients do microdosing. Ketamine, I think, is a huge one that people are starting to explore. I'm a big believer in investing in guides, right? Like going to people that are going to push you and get you out of your comfort zone, whether that's talk therapy or EMDR or even just a coach, like public speaking. I have a coach that I utilize for public speaking, and I was so just blown away by the little things that I was and wasn't doing that he reflected back to me. And then I'm able to be challenged to just like Toastmasters, looking in a mirror and correcting things that I'm doing that aren't necessarily going to be the best output, right? So I think there's just so many ways that we can challenge our brain, but most of us just aren't honestly willing to step into that discomfort.
So are you guys using any AI now in what you're doing? I mean, we had this conversation earlier with some other unrelated stuff, but AI is the darling right now. So what are you seeing? How is this impacting your space? How is this impacting the way that all the rest of us potentially are going to be able to utilize our own brain mapping data?
Absolutely. There is currently, from what I've heard in our field, some platforms that are going to create AI-built protocols. So right now in the field of neurofeedback, you can either go to places where a system spits out protocols for you, or you have a clinical person do your protocols by looking hand at the brain maps. I'm biased, I like the clinical eye on it right now, but as neurofeedback begins to grow, and I hope that it absolutely blows up to like the level of chiropractic that has that reputation, but AI will be great because then protocols can be done more from that eye.
That's amazing. So would you say that the mapping that you're doing, does that give you some sort of brain age the same way that you might do epigenetic testing or something like that?
Yeah, you can actually put like a brain age on a brain map. You can also measure what we look at as a processing speed, which is correlated with something called peak alpha, but how well does your brain take up and process information? There's an actual number that's reflective of that. So it's a really good marker for us to see, how well is your brain dealing with stress and the aging process. So not only, to your point, should you be making sure your brain's you're taking care of your brain, but you need to make sure you're investing it so it can take care of you and that processing speed doesn't decline year after year.
This sounds like something that you should be able to put on a resume. Like you have like some number,
like
a
my
peak number.
actual brain age is this, according to neurofeedback.
People are like, don't do that, I won't get the job.
Yeah.
Do you find that you're able to provide a substantial benefit to the folks that come in? And what I mean is, someone might go to their doctor, someone might be with their psychiatrist, or they might have, a pre-existing condition that they're not getting success with, right? But when they come see you, and you guys do the mapping and the analysis, what type of actual impact that's above and beyond? Because I think a lot of people don't understand, like, we talk about the power of data sort of separately.
Yeah.
And this is so powerful because we have a supercomputer that is more powerful than any computer on the planet, right? We have not yet created a computer that can do what any one of our brains can do. Mm-hmm. So what type of impact does this have, to somebody who might be feeling like they need something else?
Yes, I mean, I can't tell you how many people come into our office and they feel like they've exhausted all options. They have done countless years of traditional therapy. They've done brain spotting, they've done EMDR, they've done everything. And I think, to your point, still not enough people know about brain mapping neurofeedback. So we get, yes, peak performers, but we get really complex cases that come to our centers. And that being said, what I will say is that it's truly a root cause approach, because if somebody's been struggling with anxiety and they've tried all of these different things and it's not working, then we still have to address the hardware. And so not only are we giving people answers, whether it's for their kids or for themselves or for one of their parents, but you're also giving them the hope that it's like, hey, your brain doesn't have to stay stuck. Mm-hmm. Your brain literally has the power to rewire itself. You just have to give it a catalyst in which to do so. And I can't tell you how many testimonies we have of people that they've tried everything, and then they do a series of neurofeedback, they rewire their brain, and they're blown away with their own outcomes.
I love the idea of talking about this with the hardware, right? Mm-hmm. I think the brain is such a out there concept for most of us because of consciousness and like identity of self and everything. It's sort of a disconnected piece of us as far as there being a piece of hardware in there. So I love that. I've never heard anybody talk about it in that way, but I think it makes it very relatable.
And it makes it very relatable to how the brain works. What I'd love to hear is, what kind of a case study example could you give us as far as like somebody that came in, what they struggled with, what the process was as they went through this, and then what the results were?
I'll give the example of it was an influencer. I actually didn't know that she was an influencer. And it's funny, my staff text messaged me. They're like, how did you get her to come into your clinic? I was like, I don't even know who that is. I don't really know.
So also painting the picture, this is probably somebody that looks like they have their life together and they're successful and they're doing all these things. And then behind the scenes, you see kind of what's actually going on.
Yeah, and actually if people want to go check it out, she's very open about her story. So her Instagram is @TayChe, but she owns this huge athleisure wear company. And so anyway, she came in, she was having like daily panic attacks, heart palpitations, unfunctioning at times. And obviously growing a business, being married, starting a family, you can't be having panic attacks all the time. So she ended up doing a whole series of neurofeedback, and thankfully, it was great for us because she started posting her journey and being really transparent with how it was impacting her. Even from the beginning where she was like, I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm gonna try it out. And to this day, she says neurofeedback saved her life. She doesn't ever struggle with panic attacks at all anymore.
Wow.
She's scaled her business significantly because her focus is dialed in. She has a beautiful family that she's grown, and she'll shout it from the rooftop. So anxiety is it's like a slam dunk case typically for us.
Yeah, which is amazing. And what I'm hearing is, and I tell my kids this, Kate, what are the neural pathways that we're creating and supporting? So that's like, where's the information going from point A to point B? And if you're in a place where it's like, this is how it works and it's not working very well, how do you change that? How do you create new neural pathways? So when I turn their screens off, they're like, why don't we have any more screen time? And I'm like, because we need to not strengthen those neural pathways too much. We need to create new ones. And so this is essentially how you are training the brain to do that and create those new neural pathways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in ending, I also just want to hear again, like you mentioned, a couple simple ones to help us start creating those new neural pathways, like brushing your teeth with the opposite hand. What are some other just really simple things we can do, adding to our daily routine that don't take time but will have a big impact?
I think we deeply undervalue the power of breath work. If you have not mastered the power and art of breath work, then you are literally missing out on your own superpower. So different breath work exercises, big fan of box breathing. If you don't know what that is, breathing in for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and then hold for 4. You do that for 2 to 3 minutes and it will reset your brain pretty instantaneously. You cannot be anxious and be doing breath work really at the same time. I'd say journaling, but actually with a pen and on a piece of paper is very undervalued as well. If you are challenging yourself to like write out your fears and write out your worries and write out where you're feeling stuck, like so many people just feel like they're overthinking and ruminating. You thought dump and you let all of those worries come out through the passing of a pen. I promise you by the time you get to the end of the page, you're not gonna feel the same level of angst and worry that you had in the first place. But we sit there, right, and we stew in our own emotions. Get it out of your system, put it on paper. So that's a huge one. And then probably, for the people looking for peak performance, I definitely think bilateral stimulation tapping is a fun one. If you need to go into a performance state, you can definitely tap on your temples. Just quick little bilateral stimulation tapping. It mimics that of EMDR, and it can activate your frontal cortex so that you can get more into a focus state and retain the information.
Yeah, those are great tips. Thank you for that.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, we'd love to have you back to talk more about peak performance. I want to talk about the Tom Brady effect. I know listen, I know he used neurofeedback to
Kirk
Cousins. So I think there is a lot of, and that, at the end of the day, people look to the folks that are super successful and what are they doing. And I know there's a lot of this type of technology and a lot of the things that are biologically making us better and younger start like in horses and athletes, right? Like those are the places where people look because they're the ones that really are pushing the envelope. So I would love to talk to you another time about that and get some more info.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Seriously,
and where can we find you for more info?
Go definitely follow us on Braincode Centers Instagram. If you're more curious to just learn more, we always do initial consultations with a specialist. So fill out a scheduling request on our website, braincodecenters.com.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
It doesn't take one conference, it takes multiple. That's why I hope to see you guys in Chicago, Miami. You guys should join my WhatsApp group, and we all truly become friends.